and welcome to Ladies of Another View on Back. And I'm here with Carmen and Jan. And I should say I'm Patty, because if you don't know, if you're not a regular viewer, you might not know who we all are. And I've been on every day this week because Mary is on vacation.
Well, we all need a break.
We all need a break.
Yep, everybody needs a break every now and then, even though this is fun, right?
Yes, it is.
It's not even work. Today has turned into Religious Freedom Free Speech Day because we have a full lineup with attorneys representing those two issues. So later in the show, we're going to talk about what's going on at UND and their transgender policy with Christopher Dodson. But right now, first, I want to welcome to the show attorney Paul Jonna. And he's coming to us from California from the Lamondre law firm, and he's also a special counsel with the Thomas More Society.
Excellent.
Sorry, I tripped up a little bit, but welcome to the show.
Great to be with you, ladies. Thank you.
And you want to argue a case before the Supreme Court on religious freedom, right? Tell us what's going on and what the case is about.
Sure. So in San Diego, the San Diego Unified School District decided to impose a vaccine mandate for all schools in the district, and they did so in a way that completely ignored the religious and First Amendment rights of students by basically not giving students the right to religious exemptions. It was the first such mandate in the country, COVID-19 mandate in schools. And California had announced more broadly that they were going to issue a statewide mandate, but that would include a personal belief or religious exemption. But San Diego went a step further. They imposed their own mandate on their own authority, supposedly, that would not include those protections. So, and our client's a devout Christian who's very firmly pro-life. She's against taking any vaccines that have a connection to aborted fetal cell lines. So, but basically, the mandate as structured by San Diego would require her to withdraw from sports. She's a preeminent athlete. Would require her to engage in home study, home learning, and basically never come on campus. Whereas 85% of the high school that she goes to would still be allowed to come unvaccinated, either because they're below the minimum age for the vaccine, or because they have a medical exemption, or because they fall into another preferred class like military family or foster youth or disabled youth. So there was all these different exceptions, but they didn't make an exception for the religious rights of students. And so that's why we filed a lawsuit in San Diego federal court, Southern District of California. Went all the way, it was the trial judge denied the request for an injunction, went to the Ninth Circuit. They gave us a temporary win, but then the school district did some legal maneuvers where that injunction was ultimately dissolved. So we went to the Supreme Court. The case is fully briefed, but while we were waiting for the Supreme Court to intervene, someone else challenged that same mandate on a different legal theory in state court and had the mandate temporarily struck down. It's very clear that's a temporary ruling because the school district's going to be appealing that. So basically, it's a convoluted legal situation, but the bottom line is we are still asking the Supreme Court for emergency relief, because if our client is not vaccinated by January 24th, then she has to withdraw from sports and can't go to class. And so although that mandate has been called into question by another court, it seems that that ruling is going to be a short-lived, ruling, because the other side is very intent on appealing that. And so cases at the U.S. Supreme Court, but as people may know, the Supreme Court recently heard argument last Friday on two other vaccine mandate cases. They still have not issued their decision. One of them involves the OSHA mandate, and we're waiting to hear how that comes out. But in the meantime, we are pretty optimistic that the Supreme Court will rule in our favor, because when you start making exceptions to, when you issue mandates like this, and you make all kinds of exceptions for secular reasons, but you ignore religious rights of people, then that triggers strict scrutiny under the First Amendment. And it's going to be very hard for the school district to maintain that mandate. Very similar to what we saw with the Supreme Court ruling on the closure of churches. Our firm handled those cases where in California, like in many other states, they shut down churches during the pandemic but they left open retail establishments. And those were, the California and many other states were rebuked for doing that. And it was a clear constitutional violation. And it's a very similar situation here. Those same legal principles should apply.
Can I just ask, can you explain for our viewers, what is the Thomas More Society and how does that fit into what you're doing?
The Thomas More Society is a public interest law firm based in Chicago with lawyers across the nation. They defend religious liberty, traditional family values, pro-life causes. They are, excellent lawyers. We happen to be their special counsel in California. We handle a lot of the Thomas More Society litigation in California, but they have in-house lawyers. They have other special counsels similar to us, which are not in-house, but which get involved in cases, in different cases throughout the country. But they have a team of really nationally preeminent and brilliant lawyers who are really making major wins across the country in different states. So, but yes, they are a nonprofit dedicated to fighting these important battles, protecting our religious liberty.
So we're seeing kind of double standards all over the country. If I understand it correctly, teachers are allowed religious exemptions and not students? What would be the difference there?
Right. So that's another one of the issues we pointed out to the court, which is it's scientifically and constitutionally absurd and illogical that they would give teachers religious exemptions to the vaccine, but not students. I mean, as everyone knows now, children are much less risk for serious disease from COVID-19. So they should be given more exemptions than anyone else. But anyway, it makes no sense. I mean, if the teachers are going to be given religious exemptions, then students should be too. So that's one of 8 different exemptions that they give to different categories of people without recognizing the religious rights of students. So that is one key example.
Are you able to tell us, maybe it's out of your wheelhouse, but who is instigating these kinds of policies? Is it school board level? Is it administration? Is it the Capitol? Is it Newsom? I mean, who's doing this?
So Newsom did announce a statewide mandate, but in this case, with this mandate, this was voted on by the board of the San Diego Unified School District Board of Education, which is a very extreme board that's taken lots of measures really that are really out there. They've consulted with UCSD. They claim to be their experts. UCSD is also very extreme with the COVID measures as well. But who's behind this? It seems to be a partnership between the school board and UCSD. The school board is controlled by fairly left-wing Democrats, and the truth is that lots of things, not a lot of good is going to happen in San Diego until they get voted out. But that's the problem here, the school board.
Welcome back to the show, Paul. Paul Jonna with the Lemandry Law Firm, and he's also counsel with the Thomas More Society. And we're talking about a case that he's hoping is going to be heard by the Supreme Court on a mandate in a San Diego school district which gives 85% of students exemptions, but no religious exemptions for a mandated vaccine. Paul, can you tell us, 85% of the students qualify for some kind of exemption, but there's no religious exemption. What are all these exemptions?
Yeah, so just to be clear, I mean, 85% of students are exempted in some way from the mandate. And part of the reason is because the mandate only applies to students who are 16 and up. And I'm not suggesting that they should mandate it to all kids in the school, but they decided, the school board actually wanted to mandate it for all ages, but then they decided to tie it to FDA approval. So they exempted anyone under 16. They're allowing those people to come on campus, those students come on campus unvaccinated. They're accepting that risk. So that's the point there. But beyond the children under the age of 16, they're also, again, I'm not saying that these are bad exemptions, but the fact is they are exemptions. They're risks that the school is taking, willing to accept, and not offer those same, not offer a similar exemption for religious students. So as kids under the age of 16, there's pregnant students were offered a deferral during the pregnancy. Again, I'm not arguing with that, the reasoning of that. If you were in a certain category of students, there's like a whole bunch of categories they listed. You have a deferral, a conditional deferral, and it was, homeless students, migrant foster students, military students, if you're disabled with an IEP, if you have a medical, and for all those categories, they gave you some more time to get vaccinated. But again, the point is that they're doing damage to their supposed, compelling interest by allowing those unvaccinated students to come on campus and spread the virus. Meanwhile, if you have religious objections to the vaccine, you're basically treated like separate but equal. You're told to stay home. You're not welcome here. You can't play sports. You can't do anything. You can't even come on campus at all. So it's those categories of students. Then obviously students can request medical exemptions. Teachers can request medical exemptions. Teachers can request religious exemptions. So that I think is about those are the main exemptions. But if you do the math on the kids under the age of 16 and on all the other carve outs, it does work out to basically 85% of the students don't have to have the vaccine, but can still come on campus. And that's the key point. They're allowing them to come on campus unvaccinated. But for students like our client, and by the way, there aren't a lot of them. It's not like there's a flood of requests for religious exemptions. There's a handful probably of students who have sincere religious objections to taking the vaccine. And again, they don't have to just take the student's word for it. They could ask for some documentation about what their beliefs are and what they're based on. But for students like our client who have these sincere religious objections, they're basically being treated like separate but equal. They're told to stay off campus and they're not welcome. And that's not what any other school district, as far as I'm aware, most states, I think 99.9% of school districts are not mandating this vaccine. They're doing just fine not mandating the vaccine. And if they are mandating it, they're probably giving religious exemptions. California is an outlier, just like they were with the church closures, and they were rebuked by the Supreme Court for that, and they had to ultimately pay, I think, in our cases alone, close to $3 million in legal fees after they lost those cases. So
wow,
we're hoping to avoid that by them coming into compliance, but it seems as though they will not come into compliance unless they're compelled to do so by the court.
I have a question on, it sounds like some of the protected classes, and I think that's where America went wrong when we started deciding there were protected classes, but that's another discussion. But when it gets to all the gender issues and you have some of these kids that are considered perhaps more fragile, more sensitive, more whatever the terminology is that they're using, is that a special class that's getting special attention for exemptions due to mental health issues perhaps? Are you seeing any of that? Or is that just not a factor?
So it's one of the problems is that the medical exemption, the school district tries to claim that it's very objective and there's not lots of wiggle room. But the truth is these vaccines are so novel and so many different conditions are unknown in terms of how they interact with the vaccine that there is quite a bit of discretion involved, where if a student requests a medical exemption with some documentation by a doctor, and it can be decided on it in a case-by-case basis. So I'm not sure to what extent that applies in the situation the example you provided, but I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they're making special individual one-off exceptions for students for those factors. But it's not one of the listed criteria. But again, the problem with all these exemptions is that they can be individualized and case by case. So right. I don't know if that answers your question, but there is no specific carve out for transgender students, though.
Right. Okay, and then I had one more question. I know you're saying it's just the San Diego schools, but are you seeing it in college campuses as well then, that there's strict kinds of policies on college campuses?
We have gotten calls from different potential people who are asking about representation on colleges, although I don't know the statistics. I'm not sure how many colleges are mandating the vaccine and what kind of exemptions they're giving. I do know that for school children in K through 12, it's very rare. It's a mandate. There are vaccine mandates in general have been upheld by courts, as many people know. In order for kids to attend school, at least in California, there are mandatory vaccines, and those have been upheld by courts. What is not common, though, is forcing the vaccine without giving a religious exemption to students. So I'm not sure what the stats are in colleges. I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of colleges are mandating the vaccine, but I suspect that they're giving them, they're respecting the religious rights of students, for the most part, although I don't know firsthand.
Okay, thank you.
So are the parents and the teachers standing up for your client, or are you getting any support in that area at all?
Oh, parents are outraged. I mean, we're getting inundated with calls from concerned parents who want to who are either supportive of the case or who wanted to bring their own challenges. I mean, in San Diego County, San Diego Unified is probably the biggest school district. There's lots of other school districts who are probably watching to see what happens with this case. And a handful of others have also imposed their own mandates, but then they backed off of them. Like, for example, LA imposed a similar mandate, but then decided to defer it for another year because too many students were unwilling to get the vaccine. Too many families spoke out against this. So I think there's a lot of support. I think there's also, it's a very controversial issue, as you may suspect. I mean, we proceeded in the case anonymously for our client. Her name is not revealed in our papers, and for good reason. We found out just shortly after filing the complaint that one of the teachers read an article about the case in the class, and another girl in the class said, "Let's find out who's suing our high school and let's jump this girl." So I mean, it's a very contentious issue. It's a very divisive issue. So it's unfortunate, but I think there is quite a bit of support for for our side of this, which is basically we're not anti-vaccine, we're anti-mandates with no religious exemption. So it's not, our clients are not anti-vaccine, and that's something that we made clear in the pleadings.
And you're anti-hypocrisy, right? Like you make it fair, and we only have just 30 seconds. So would this set precedent if it's heard before the Supreme Court and they decide in your favor? Would it set precedent, or are you going to have to keep going back to court, school district after school district?
No, I think it will actually. I think if we prevail, it will establish that you can't, a school district can't impose a vaccine mandate without offering religious exemptions. I mean, that's a basic point that I think the court should make as we see other school districts trying to follow the lead of San Diego here. And I think that hopefully we'll get a good ruling from the Supreme Court in the next few weeks to that effect.
I sure hope so. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for fighting this fight.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
My pleasure.